Sometimes, the quietest people carry the heaviest storms. The receipt lay untouched on table 12, a single line circled in ink, $18 unpaid. While across the dining room, Emily Carter stood still as the manager's voice cut through the clinking glasses and low conversations, sharp but controlled, accusing her of breaking policy, of hiding someone in the storage room. And when the door swung open, revealing a small boy wrapped in an oversized jacket, pale and trembling. The room fell into a silence that felt heavier than noise. Emily's fingers tightened around her order pad, but her face didn't change. Not when the manager told her she was done, not when her name was erased from the schedule with a single sentence, not even when a few customers looked away, pretending not to see. And at the corner table, Daniel Whitmore, a man used to decisions worth millions, paused mid-sip, his glass hovering inches from his lips as he watched something he couldn't quite define. Because she didn't argue, she didn't plead, she didn't explain about hospital bills or night shifts or how her 8-year-old brother had nowhere else to go. She just nodded once, soft and steady, and said, "Thank you for the opportunity," as if she were leaving on her own terms, as if dignity could still exist in a moment designed to strip it away. And then she moved, quiet, precise, removing her apron, folding it carefully like it still mattered, like every small action still carried weight, while the boy reached for her hand, trusting, unaware of what had just been taken from them. And outside, the rain had already started, tapping against the glass in slow, deliberate rhythm, and Daniel noticed the smallest detail, the way she paused at the door, not to look back, but to straighten the edge of the uniform she no longer had to wear. And something about that stillness, that refusal to break, unsettled him more than any confrontation could have. Because in a world where people fought to keep what they had, she was walking away with nothing except something he couldn't buy, couldn't name, and couldn't ignore. The rain hit harder now, steady and cold, soaking through Emily's thin jacket within seconds as she stepped onto the sidewalk, one hand shielding her brother Noah, the other gripping the folded uniform like it still belonged to her. And Noah's small voice broke the silence, asking if they were going home, simple, hopeful, unaware of how uncertain that word had just become. And Emily knelt down in the dim glow of a flickering streetlight, brushing damp hair from his forehead, her fingers gentle, steady, even as the wind picked up around them. "We are going somewhere warm," she said softly, not promising more than she could give, because promises, she had learned, were fragile things. And behind the glass doors of the restaurant, Daniel Whitmore had not moved, not yet, his reflection staring back at him in the window, layered over the image of the woman who had just walked out with nothing but quiet dignity. And something about the way she had said thank you, without resentment, without fear, replayed in his mind in a way he could not dismiss, because he had seen anger before, desperation too, but not this, not calm, not controlled. Not someone choosing grace when the world had given her none. And outside, Emily reached into her pocket, counting what little remained, a few bills, damp from the rain, just enough for medicine, not enough for a cab, not enough for anything extra. And still, she did not hesitate, guiding Noah down the street, step by step, her pace steady, her shoulders straight, as if she refused to let the night bend her. And Daniel finally set his glass down, untouched now, the sound quiet but final, as if something inside him had shifted, because for the first time in a long time, he was not thinking about deals or numbers or outcomes. He was thinking about a question that unsettled him more than any loss ever had. Why did she not ask for help? And before he could answer it, before logic could catch up with instinct, he was already moving, already stepping toward the door, already chasing something he did not yet understand. While outside, just a few blocks away, Emily suddenly stopped, her eyes catching something behind her, the glow of the restaurant sign still visible in the distance. And without a word, she turned around, not toward shelter, not toward safety, but back into the rain, back toward the place that had just let her go. And Noah looked up at her, confused, as she tightened her grip on his hand, her voice calm, unwavering. "There is something I need to return." And somewhere behind her, footsteps approached, faster now, closing the distance between two lives that were about to collide in a way neither of them could have predicted. The door had barely stopped swinging when Emily stepped back inside, rain trailing behind her in quiet drops across the polished floor. Conversations slowing again as a few heads turned, recognizing the girl who had just been dismissed, but she did not look at them, did not look at the manager, did not look at anyone except the counter where the bills were settled, and Noah stayed close to her side, small hand wrapped tightly in hers, his shoes leaving faint wet prints as they walked, and behind them, just outside, Daniel Whitmore paused under the awning, watching through the glass, something in his chest tightening as he realized she had come back, not out of desperation, not out of anger, but with the same calm purpose she had carried when she left, and Emily reached into her pocket, pulling out the damp bills she had counted minutes before, smoothing them carefully against the edge of the counter as if presentation still mattered, as if respect could exist even when none had been given, and her voice, when she spoke, was soft but clear enough to cut through the room. "There is still $18 on table 12, she said, placing the money down with steady fingers. "I did not finish the order, so it should not be unpaid." And the manager frowned, confused, irritated, already preparing to dismiss her again. But something in her tone slowed him, something in the way she stood, straight-backed, unshaken, made the moment stretch longer than it should have, and a server nearby glanced at the receipt, then back at Emily, uncertain, as if witnessing something unfamiliar, and outside, Daniel stepped closer to the door, no longer just observing, because he understood now. This was not about the money, not about $18, not about policy or rules. This was about something far rarer, something that did not bend even when everything else did. And inside, Emily reached into the pocket of the folded apron she still held, pulling out a few more bills. Tips from earlier, placing them beside the first. "This is extra," she added quietly, in case anything was missed, and Noah looked up at her, confused, whispering that they needed that money, that they had to buy medicine, and for the first time, her hand trembled slightly, just for a second, just enough to show that she felt the weight of what she was doing, but her voice did not change. "We will manage," she said, not as reassurance, but as a decision already made. And that was the moment Daniel pushed the door open, the sound sharp against the stillness, drawing every eye toward him as he stepped inside, water dripping from his coat, presence filling the space. Without effort, and he did not look at the manager, did not acknowledge the room, his gaze fixed only on Emily, studying her as if trying to understand something he had never encountered before. And when he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled, but unmistakably different from before. "Why would you come back for that?" he asked, not accusing, not mocking, but genuinely uncertain, as if the answer mattered more than anything else in that moment. And Emily met his eyes, not intimidated, not impressed, just steady, and for a brief second, the entire room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for words that would change everything. Emily did not answer right away, not because she did not have words, but because she chose them carefully, the way she had chosen every step since she walked back through that door. And for a moment, all that could be heard was the faint drip of rain from Daniel's coat onto the polished floor, steady, measured, like time stretching itself thinner. And when she finally spoke, her voice was calm, almost quiet, but it carried across the room with a clarity that made people listen whether they wanted to or not. "Because it is not mine," she said simply, her eyes holding his without hesitation, without challenge, just truth. And Daniel frowned slightly, not in disagreement, but in something closer to confusion, as if the answer was too simple for a world that had taught him everything came with conditions. "It is $18, he replied, not dismissing, but testing. Most people would not come back for that. And Emily gave the smallest shake of her head, not defensive, not offended, just certain. "Most people do not have much to lose," she said, and something in that sentence shifted the air again, subtle, but undeniable, because it was not about the amount. It was about what remained when everything else was taken away. And Noah tugged gently at her sleeve, his voice small, worried, reminding her they still needed medicine. And for the briefest moment, her eyes softened, the only crack in the calm she had held so tightly. But it passed just as quickly, replaced again by that quiet steadiness, and Daniel noticed it. Every detail, the hesitation, the restraint, the way she chose not to turn this moment into a plea, and it unsettled him more than any demand ever could, because he was used to being asked, expected, needed, and here stood someone who refused all of it, even when she clearly had reason to accept it. And behind them, the manager cleared his throat, impatient, trying to regain control of a situation that no longer belonged to him. "You have done what you came for," he said sharply, gesturing toward the door. "Now please leave." But Daniel did not move, did not step aside, did not acknowledge the interruption. His attention still fixed on Emily as if the rest of the room had faded into something irrelevant. And then, slowly, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a card, not flashy, not dramatic, just a simple motion that carried weight. "What if I told you there are easier ways to handle this?" he said, his tone measured, offering, but not commanding, and Emily's gaze dropped briefly to the card, then back to his face, and for a moment, it seemed like time paused again, suspended between two choices, one that would solve everything immediately, and one that would not, and she took a breath, steady, controlled, before speaking again. "There are always easier ways," she said, "but not all of them are right." And the words landed softly, but they stayed, settling into the space between them in a way that could not be ignored. And Daniel did not respond right away, because for the first time in a long time, he was not thinking about what he could offer. He was thinking about what he had just been shown, something rare, something unspoken, something that could not be bought. And as Emily gently took Noah's hand again, turning toward the door for the second time that night, the room remained silent, not out of tension, but out of something deeper, something closer to respect. And Daniel stood there, still holding the card he had not given, realizing that if he let her walk away now, he would not just be losing an opportunity, he would be losing the chance to understand something that had already begun to change him. The door opened again, and this time the sound lingered, as if the night itself had stepped inside, and Emily did not turn back, not immediately, her hand tightening slightly around Noah's as they moved toward the rain once more. But Daniel Whitmore moved first, faster than he expected, his voice cutting through the quiet before the door could close again. "Wait," he said, not loud, not commanding, but enough, and Emily paused, just one step past the threshold, the cool air brushing against her face, the rain visible in the glow of the streetlight beyond, and slowly, she turned, not fully, just enough to acknowledge him, her expression unchanged, still calm, still composed, and Daniel walked toward her, each step measured, as if he were approaching something fragile, something he did not want to disrupt. And when he stopped a few feet away, he did not reach out, did not offer the card again. Instead, he looked at Noah, really looked this time, noticing the slight tremble in the boy's hands, the way he leaned subtly into his sister for support, and then back at Emily. "How long has he been sick?" Daniel asked, his tone different now, quieter, stripped of distance, and Emily hesitated, not because she wanted to hide it, but because she was not used to being asked without expectation attached. 3 months, she said finally, her voice steady. "It comes and goes, but today was worse." And Daniel nodded once, processing, not interrupting, not rushing, and behind them, the manager shifted impatiently, uncomfortable with a conversation he could no longer control, but neither of them acknowledged him, because the moment had moved beyond that space, beyond that authority, and Daniel glanced at the money on the counter, then back at Emily. "You said you would manage," he said, not questioning, but repeating, as if trying to understand the weight of those words, and Emily met his gaze again, unwavering. "I always do," she replied, and there was no pride in it, no defiance, just truth, and that was what made it land, what made it stay. And for a brief second, Daniel looked down, something shifting behind his eyes, something recalculating, because for the first time, the solution in front of him was not about numbers or transactions, it was about trust, about respect, about offering something without turning it into a debt. And when he looked back up, his voice was softer, almost careful. "Then let me make it easier to manage," he said, not as a command, not as an assumption, but as an option. And Emily's expression did not change, but her silence spoke. Asking the question she did not say out loud, and Daniel understood it. "Not charity," he added, quickly but gently. "A job." And the word hung there, simple, but different, because it did not take from her. It gave her something to stand on, and Noah looked up at her again, hopeful now, searching her face for an answer, and for the first time that night, Emily hesitated longer, her gaze shifting between Daniel, the door, and the money she had just placed down, weighing something deeper than the offer itself, and the room behind them remained quiet, waiting, because this was no longer about a waitress or a billionaire, it was about a choice, one that would decide whether dignity could exist alongside opportunity, or if one would have to be sacrificed for the other. Emily did not answer immediately, the word job still hanging in the air between them, heavier than it sounded, because it was not just an offer, it was a shift, a line that once crossed could not be undone, and she looked at Daniel carefully, not impressed, not intimidated, but measuring something deeper, something unspoken, and Noah's small hand tightened in hers again, his voice barely above a whisper, asking if they could go somewhere warm, and that was when her eyes softened, just slightly, enough to reveal the weight she had been carrying all along, and she exhaled slowly, steadying herself before speaking. "What kind of job?" she asked, her tone calm, controlled, but no longer distant, and Daniel seemed to understand the importance of the question, the need for clarity, not persuasion. "Something you can grow into," he replied, choosing his words with care. "Not here, not like this, but somewhere that values what you just showed." And Emily glanced briefly at the dining room. Behind him, the place where she had just been dismissed without hesitation. Then back at him, and there was a pause, a quiet moment where the world seemed to hold still again. Because this was not about pride anymore. It was about survival, about Noah, about the reality waiting for them outside in the rain. And still, she did not rush, did not accept out of urgency, because whatever choice she made had to belong to her, fully, without pressure, without obligation, and Daniel saw that too. Saw the hesitation not as resistance, but as strength, and it shifted something in him once more. "You would not owe me anything," he added, his voice steady. "No conditions, no expectations beyond the work itself." And Emily's eyes searched his for a moment longer, as if testing the truth of that promise. And something in his expression, something unguarded, something honest, made her believe him, not completely, not yet, but enough, and she nodded once, small but certain. "Then I will consider it," she said, not accepting, not refusing, but opening the door just enough. And Noah looked up at her, hopeful now, the tension in his shoulders easing just a little, and Daniel allowed himself the faintest breath, as if he had been holding it longer than he realized. And for a moment, nothing else was said, because sometimes the most important decisions did not need more words. And as Emily turned once more toward the door, this time without hesitation, Daniel did not stop her again, did not follow, because he understood now that this was not something he could control or rush. It had to unfold on its own. And as the door closed behind her, the sound soft but final, he remained standing there, watching the space she had just left, knowing that whatever happened next would not just change her life, but his as well, in ways he had not yet begun to understand. The rain had softened by the time Emily reached the corner, but the cold had not. It lingered in the air, in the pavement, in the quiet spaces between passing cars, and Noah leaned closer to her, his steps slower now, his energy fading in a way she recognized too well, and without hesitation, she knelt beside him again, brushing her hand against his cheek, measuring the warmth, the slight tremble, the way his breathing had changed. And for the first time that night, her composure wavered just enough to reveal concern that could not be hidden behind calm words. "We are almost there," she said gently, though there was no clear destination ahead, only movement, only the next step, and behind them, through the rain and the dim streetlights, a car slowed, then stopped, not abrupt, not intrusive, just present, and Daniel stepped out, his coat now damp, his polished shoes darkened by the wet pavement. But he did not seem to notice, because his attention was fixed on them again, not from a distance this time, but close enough to see what he had missed before, the small signs, the quiet struggle, the reality behind the strength. And Emily looked up as he approached, her expression unchanged, but her eyes sharper now, more aware, as if the space between them had shifted from observation to something more personal. And Daniel stopped a few feet away, careful not to close the distance too quickly. "There is a clinic 2 blocks from here," he said, his voice steady, not urgent, not forceful, just offering information. They stay open late. And Emily held his gaze, weighing the words, not the convenience, but the intention behind them, and Noah's grip on her hand tightened again, his voice softer now, almost tired, asking if they could go. And this time, Emily did not hesitate as long, because this was different, not a solution handed to her, but a direction she could choose herself, and she nodded once, small but decisive. 2 blocks, she repeated, as if confirming it for both of them, and Daniel stepped back slightly, giving her space, not leading, not guiding, just walking alongside at a distance that respected her choice, and the three of them moved forward, the rhythm of their steps uneven but aligned, and for a moment, the city felt quieter, as if it had stepped back to let something else unfold, something not driven by urgency, but by understanding. And as they reached the corner, the faint glow of a small clinic sign came into view, flickering but steady, and Emily slowed, her eyes lingering on it, then on Noah, then briefly on Daniel. And there was no gratitude in her expression, no obligation, just acknowledgement, quiet and sincere, and Daniel nodded once in return, not expecting more, because for the first time, he understood that helping did not mean taking control. It meant knowing when to step back. And as Emily pushed the door open, guiding Noah inside, the lights spilling out into the night, Daniel remained just outside, standing still under the dim glow, watching not as a man of power, but as someone who had just begun to learn the difference between giving and understanding. The clinic door closed softly behind Emily, the faint chime echoing in the quiet space as warm air wrapped around them, a sharp contrast to the cold they had just left outside. And Noah's shoulders relaxed almost instantly, his small frame leaning into her as if the simple change in temperature had lifted some invisible weight, and Emily guided him to the nearest chair, her movements calm, deliberate, even as her eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail, the receptionist behind the desk, the worn magazines stacked neatly, the soft hum of fluorescent lights above, and for a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, just once, deeper than before stepping forward, her voice steady as she explained Noah's condition, careful not to exaggerate, careful not to plead, just stating facts the way she always did, and the receptionist nodded, already reaching for forms, already asking quiet questions, and Emily answered each one without hesitation, without pause, as if she had done this many times before. And outside, through the glass, Daniel remained where he was, hands in his coat pockets, watching but not intruding, the reflection of the clinic lights soft against the rain-slick pavement, and he could see her from where he stood, the way she stayed composed, the way she did not rush, did not panic, even when the situation clearly demanded urgency. And it struck him again, how different she was from everything he was used to, because in his world, problems were solved quickly, decisively, often with money or influence. But here, she moved through difficulty with something else entirely, something quieter, something stronger, and inside, Emily finished the paperwork, her pen moving steadily across the page, even as Noah's head rested lightly against her arm, his eyes half closed now, and when the receptionist mentioned the cost, a number that would have made most people hesitate, Emily did not react, not outwardly. She simply nodded once, as if acknowledging something already expected, and reached again into her pocket, counting what remained, knowing it would not be enough, but still placing it down without comment. And the receptionist hesitated this time, glancing at the amount, then back at Emily, unsure, as if waiting for something more, an explanation, a request, anything, but none came, and for a brief second, the silence stretched again, familiar now, heavy but not uncomfortable, and that was when the door opened behind them, the soft chime returning, and Daniel stepped inside, not hurried, not dramatic, just present, and Emily did not turn right away, did not acknowledge him immediately, because her focus remained on Noah, on the moment in front of her, and Daniel stopped a few steps in, observing, understanding now that timing mattered, that stepping in too soon could change everything. And so he waited, just long enough, until Emily finished placing the last bill on the counter, until she had done everything she could on her own, and only then did he move forward, his voice low, measured, carrying none of the authority it once did. "Let me handle the rest," he said, not as a command, not as an assumption, but as an offer that came after, not before. And this time, when Emily looked at him, something in her expression shifted, not fully, not completely, but enough to show that she understood what he had just done, not taking over, not replacing her effort, but standing beside it. And for the first time that night, she did not refuse immediately. She simply looked at him, then at Noah, then back again, as if considering something she had not allowed herself to consider before. Emily held his gaze for a moment longer, the weight of the offer settling between them, not heavy, not overwhelming, just present. And then she looked down at Noah, her hand gently brushing his hair back as he leaned against her, eyes closed now, trusting, unaware of the decision being made above him. And when she spoke, her voice was softer than before, but still steady. "Only what is needed," she said, not surrendering, not stepping aside, but allowing space for something she could not do alone. And Daniel nodded once, understanding the boundary without needing it explained, and he turned slightly toward the receptionist, his tone calm, respectful, nothing like the authority he carried in other rooms. "Please continue," he said, not interrupting the process, just ensuring it could move forward. And the receptionist glanced between them, then proceeded, her hands moving more confidently now, the tension in her posture easing as the situation shifted from uncertainty to clarity. And Emily remained where she was, not stepping back, not disengaging, her presence still centered on Noah, as if nothing else mattered more. And in that moment, Daniel did something he had not done in a long time. He stepped back, physically and quietly, allowing the scene to unfold without him at the center, because he understood. Now that this was not his moment to control, it was hers to keep. And minutes passed, quiet, measured, as a nurse approached, guiding Noah gently toward the examination room. And Emily followed, her hand never leaving his, her expression calm but focused. And just before the door closed behind them, she paused, turning slightly, her eyes meeting Daniel's once more, and there was no gratitude spoken, no acknowledgement framed in words, just a brief look that carried something deeper, something earned. And then she disappeared inside, and the door clicked softly, leaving Daniel alone in the small waiting area, the hum of the lights returning, the world settling back into its ordinary rhythm. And he sat down slowly, something unfamiliar resting in his chest, not urgency, not control, but patience. And for the first time in years, he did not reach for his phone, did not check the time, did not think about what came next. He simply waited, and as the minutes stretched into something quieter, something more reflective, he found himself replaying the night. Not the moment she returned the money, not the moment she refused the easier path, but the moment she chose to accept help without losing herself. And it stayed with him, that balance, that quiet strength. And when the examination room door finally opened again, Emily stepped out, her expression unchanged at first, composed, controlled. But her eyes carried something new, a softness that had not been there before, and she walked toward him, stopping just a few feet away, her voice calm, but different now. "He will be okay," she said, and for a moment, that was enough, more than enough. And Daniel nodded, not asking for details, not needing them, because the outcome was clear in her tone. And as the silence settled once more, Emily added quietly, almost as an afterthought, "I will take the job." And the words were simple, but they marked something far greater than an agreement. They marked a shift, a turning point neither of them could undo. And Daniel did not smile, did not celebrate. He simply nodded again, understanding that this was not a victory, not for him, not for her, but something shared, something built on respect rather than need. And as Emily turned back toward the hallway, her steps lighter now, her shoulders no longer carrying the same weight, the room felt different, quieter, but fuller, as if something invisible had changed. And in that stillness, one truth remained, clear and steady. She had not asked the world to be kind. She had shown it how.